Hello there, and a very warm welcome to another video from Change Tips and Tools. And yes, it's me again, Phil, the Brummie that hails from Birmingham, England. And I'm excited to say I'm here with another requested video, this time on Power Pivot. So with this in mind, I'm going to continue the theme of Power Query, but today's focus will be on Power Pivot and how we can take a different approach to analysing and visualising our data. Now, Power Query and Power Pivot are two independent tools that can be used together to complement each other, and they're an absolute must if you have any desire in learning Power BI. In previous videos, we have looked at Power Query and how we can use it to automate the activities of locating, importing, transforming and cleaning data. So check out the link in the description for that video. Now, where Power Pivot is used, its focus is on data analysis as well as data modeling in Excel. So you can use Power Query in the initial phases of data analysis to import and transform the data. Power Pivot is used for data analysis, advanced calculations and data modeling. Oh, and Power Pivot is absolutely fantastic when working with huge data sets. So in today's video, we will look at using Power Query and Power Pivot together to answer the same questions for budget versus actuals scenario, with some additional tricks added in, of course. And don't worry, there are chapters in the description with timestamps if you wish to jump to a particular section, and all source files can be found in the description also if you wish to follow along. So, as I always say, let's do this. And don't worry, I'm not going to lecture you on source data again, but key points are: use the same data structure, use tables and consistent naming conventions, and also think about the way you're naming your sheets. Now, I've put a link in the description to that video on combining data, so check it out if you want. Also, there is a link in the description to this file where I've completed all the formatting for you, so there's no need to revisit that pain again. But check out the link in the description on data visualization for that video if you wish to remind yourself what we did back then. Now, let's get on with bringing the data in. So I'm going to go data on the data ribbon, get data from a file, from a folder. There's my first location where my Excel files are. I'm going to open that. Select transform data. And then this time with so this is where all the data is contained in the binary column under content. I'm just going to, with that selected, do remove other columns. I'm then going to hit the down arrows to combine. I'm going to select sheet 1 and click OK. Then on here I'm going to change the actuals. The only thing I'm going to do here is change the actuals to be currency. Replace current, it's fine. Remember, with Power Query, don't ever actually change the source data. And I'm going to do close and load to, and remember I'm happy with the query name, so monthly actuals location 1, so that's my first location. So close and load to, and I'll only create a connection and click OK. So there's my first query, location 1. Let's do that again for location 2. So get data from file, from folder. There's location 2, open that up, click open. Again, transform data. Again, with that selected, with content, I'm going to do remove columns and remove other columns. Then hit the down arrow, to combine, select sheet 1, click OK. Again, I'm going to change the actuals to be currency, like so. Place current. Again, I'm going to keep the name the same, monthly actuals location 2. I'm going to do close and load 2 and create a connection only. So only create a connection, click OK. I've then got my data brought into this query. So now I've got monthly actuals location 1. So I'm going to hover over one of them, hover over them and click the edit button. I'm then going to append these two data queries together. So I'm going to do on the home ribbon, append queries, append as new. I've only got 2 tables, so I'm going to select the second query, which is location 2, and I'm going to click OK. And there we go. I've now appended those together, and I'm going to call this query now my actuals data. That's what I'm calling it. So you can see that we've got program, the program name, the project name, the date, which is month end, and then we've got actuals, which is as a currency. And I'm going to do close and load 2. But this time I'm going to say only create a connection, but I'm also going to say add this to the data model. So I'm going to click that and select it and click OK. If you don't have that option, or you don't have the pivot table ribbon available to you up here, then just do File, Options, then on your add-ins, choose the COM add-ins, select Go, and just make sure you've got the Power Pivot add-in ticked. I don't need to do that again, so I'm going to just close that. I don't need to do it. But that's how you get the Power Pivot add-in into Excel. So now that I've done that first item, if I go to Power Pivot and select Manage, you can now see I've got my actuals data within the data model. And I'm just going to expand these rows here, so expand that column there, sorry. And I'm going to change this column here to be, so it is currency, but I want to get rid of the decimal places. So I'm going to get rid of the decimal places. Click it again. And done. And I'm going to hit save there. Now, watch what happens when I close this down. Now I cannot, if I close that down, I'm going to get some warnings here. So I'm going to enable the content. It's also telling me, and I'm going to click yes on that warning, but it's also telling me that the auto save function has been switched off because of what I'm doing with Power Pivot. So I'm just going to close that down. So just remember that, just remember to click save every so often so you don't lose your work. So the next thing I'm going to do is I've now got my actuals data in there. I need to get my budget information in there as well. And again, with my budget table selected, so for 2024, I've got my program, my project, and then the allocated budgets from January through to December. I'm going to select anywhere in that table, and I'm going to go to data, and from table to the data ribbon, and from table and range, because I need to unpivot this, is I'm going to highlight my year, program and project columns, then right click on them and do unpivot other columns. So it's now taken those column headings January to December and it's turned them into rows. I now need to combine the year and this attribute it's created. So again, select both of those, right click, and then I want to merge those columns. Now my separator is going to be custom. So I'm going to put a hyphen or a dash. I'm going to call this new column date with those two columns merged. So date. And finally on that date, I'm going to select date and I'm going to convert it from data type text to a date. And now it recognizes it as a date. And then I'm also going to change the value to currency. I'm also going to double click on it and call this budget. like so. Done. And on this, I'm not going to leave the name table portfolio budget. I'm going to call this something else. So I'm going to call this we'll call that budget data, like so. Return. And then I'm going to take this and I'm going to do close load to, and again I'm going to create a connection only, and I'm going to load this to my data model. So I'm going to add it to the data model like so, and click OK. So I've now added that to the data model, and if I go to Power Pivot and do manage, you can now see I've got my budget data is also there as well. And again, let me expand these columns. Again, actuals data, where you see the date. Now you'll see on the date columns that it's got a date and time, so I don't want date and time. So again, I'm just going to select that, and then on the format, I'm just going to choose, instead of the date and time, I'm going to choose the date, just the date. And again, I'm going to do the same on the budget data. Expand that out. Just take that and let's make that just a date, like so. Same format. And again, it's important to make sure that your columns have the same format, especially because we're going to create some relationships between these, and they need to be the same format. It can't be different. And again, on the budget, I'm just going to get rid of those decimal places, like so. And I'm going to hit save. Now, I don't have to close down this window. I can literally just select the Excel icon here and go back to my workbook. And again, it just keeps reminding me, because I'm working with Power Pivot, either modeling, that autosave has been switched off. So I'm now going to go to my static data. Now here I've got a table where I don't need to do anything. I don't need to put it into Power Query. I want to just add it to my data model. And the way that I add this table here to the data model is with the Power Pivot ribbon selected, select anywhere in the table, and then just do add to data model, like so. So if I click that, and there you go. I don't need to do anything else to it. I'm just going to open that up. So you can now see that's all now within Power Pivot, within my data model. So there's one more thing I'm going to create here that I need to put in here. So I'm just going to save that, and I'm just going to close it down, and I'm going to add another sheet here. So I'm going to do the plus sign here, and I'm going to drag it over to the right here, and I'm going to call this, rename it, calendar. I need to create a calendar. I need something to join these tables up based on a date. So I'm going to type date here. Now I want at least 5 years, because I'm going to use, say for example, I want to use this spreadsheet, this template for 5 years. So I'm going to create a date range or a calendar for 5 years, but I don't want to type all that stuff out. So what, 365 days in a year. So if I go equals 365 times 5, so that's 1,825 days. Right, so that's my number, 1,825. Remember that number. So I'm going to do equals. So remember, sequence saves a lot of time. So my rows is going to be 1,825. That's the number, comma. I don't want any columns, but my starting point is going to be a date. So I'm going to use the date function, go date. So the first argument is going to be year, so I'm going to start from 2024. So 2024. I'm going to start from January, and I'm going to start from the 1st of January, like that. And then I'm going to close that bracket. Then as far as the steps, it's going to be 1. So I'm going to go 1 day at a time, and then I'm going to close that bracket. And if I then hit return, it's now created a number of numbers that relate to a date. So if I then just select the top here, and let's just select the whole column in fact, and I go to the home ribbon and change that to a a short date. There you go. It's now recognised them as dates. And if I just hold down my Shift and Control key and do the down arrow, right, I'm 2 days short. So let's just go back up to the home, back up to the top. And let's add another 2 days. So that's 2/7. Like for leap years potentially. And again, if I then do Shift, Control and down, there you go. So it's the last day up to 2028. I'm going to do Control copy and I'm just going to paste them as values. So I'm going to paste that as values. So now it's no longer a calculation, they're now values. I'm going to get rid of that number because I don't need it. And then I'm going to turn this into a table. So I'm going to do Control T with the data selected and I'm going to click here, OK. Table has headers. And I'm going to give this table a name. So I'm going to give it a meaningful name, TBL calendar. There you go, and hit return. And then with this selected, I'm going to go to my data here. And I am going to, from table and range, add this to Power Query because I want to do add some additional things to this within Power Query. I'm going to change this column from date and time to just a date and replace current. That's fine. And with that date column selected, I'm going to add another column. So I'm going to do add column and I'm going to do it from a date. So with that date column selected, I'm going to do the drop down on date and select year. So I've now got the year. And again, I'm going to reselect the date. Again, do the drop down and I want the month number. Again, I'm going to select it again, and I am going to, and if you want, you can add the quarter as well, or you can add the days. I'm just going to add the month name as well, might want that. So I'm happy with that now. I don't need anything else. So I'm going to call this calendar, I don't want it to call table calendar, I'm going to call it calendar, this query. So there's my name and my query, and on this I'm going to do close and load to, and again I'm going to create a connection only and I'm going to add it to my data model. So add this to my data model like so, click OK. Done. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to close the queries and connections window down. I don't need this to be visible, so I'm going to hide this sheet. So I'm going to click hide, and I'm going to go to Power Pivot, and I'm going to go to Manage. So now I've got 4 tabs. I've got my actuals data, I've got my budget data, I've got my project information, which really is my cross-reference between the project, the parent program, and what category they belong to. And then I've got my calendar tab. So again, in the calendar tab, I'm going to expand that, and I'm just going to change this to be a date, a short date here, not date and time, like so. So I've now created that, and I can click save, like so. So now I've got my tables within what loaded in my data model. I can then create some relationships. So I'm going to go to diagram view, and there are my 4 tables that you can see. So I've got my actuals data, I've got my budget data, I've then got my projects, which is basically my cross-reference table, and I've got that calendar. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to create a relationship. So I need to create a relationship to my budget data. So from project, I'm going to select it there, click it, and then drag it to project in my budget data. You'll notice I've got a 1 there and there's an asterisk here. So there's a one-to-many relationship between, so there's one instance of it here and many instances of it in the budget table. And again, I'm going to select projects and I'm going to drag that and put it onto projects within actuals data, like so. I've now created a relationship between the cross-reference table and my budget and actuals data. The next thing I need to do is create a relationship between the calendar and my budget and actuals data. So from the date here, I'm going to select date and drag it to date on the budget data, like so. And again, it's created a one-to-many relationship. Now, even though the names are different, so I've got date here and then got month end, they are both the same format, the same date. Excel will recognize that, so I can drag that date and I can then create a relationship to month end. And again, it's on a one-to-many. And if I highlight or hover over the connection, you can see it's showing what two fields or columns are connected between the tables. Again, here I can see it, here I can see it, and again I hover over that and I can see it. So I've now created my relationships. Now what I can do now is start creating pivot tables. So I can start creating a pivot table by selecting this option here. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to go back to my data view and I'm going to click save, and then I'm going to close this window down for now. So I'm going to close that down, and again it's just telling me I'm going to hit save there. Now autosave has come on, and let's think about the pivot tables and what we did last time. Now that I've got all my data into Power Pivot, I don't need to do anything else. I don't need to do what I did in Power Query. I can now simply select anywhere in here. So if I take, I'm going to make this column a little bit bigger because I want to put a slicer in here. Well, let's look at trying repeating or duplicating what we did, and then we're going to add some other things in there as well, but doing it through Power Pivot. So in here, I'm going to select my column here, and I'm going to do insert pivot table, but I'm going to do it from data model here. So not from external like we did before, or from a table and range. I'm going to do from data model. I'm going to use existing, so where I've got this cell selected in the existing worksheet, and just click OK. Now with this table now, you can see it looks slightly different over here on the pivot table fields, because now we've got multiple tables available to us. We can see where we've created information through Power Query and load it into the data model, and we've also got the tables here as well. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to open up the projects table here, and I'm going to take category and I'm going to drag it into my row. Boom, there it is. I'm then going to take the actuals information from my actuals table and take the actuals and drag it into the values. Now you'll notice I've not had to do any formatting here because it's picked the formatting up from our data model, so I don't need to worry about that. And then I'm going to expand the budget table, and I'm going to drag budget down into the values. So I've now got my sum of actuals and sum of budget here. Now with this table selected, I'm going to, and again I'm either going to go through the insert ribbon, or in the pivot table analysis I can do insert slicer there as well. And if I open that up, at the moment it's showing me what's active, i.e. what tables are active in this pivot table. But I can choose to select all, and now I can see all my tables available to me from my data model, and I want the date piece here, and I want year. So I'm going to select that and click OK. And then I'm just going to drag this over here. I'm going to again slice that and give it two columns. Again, using my Alt key, I'm just going to snap it into position in the grid, like so. And again now, so if I select 2025, it'll go blank because there's no data in 2025. If I select 2024, it's fine. And there you go. So now let's repeat what we did last time for our data visualization. So with this pivot table selected, I'm going to do insert. I'm going to insert a 2D bar chart. Let's just make this a little bit bigger, like so. Again, I'm going to right click on one of the fields, and I'm going to do hide all field buttons on the chart. Again, I'm just going to get rid of the Power Pivot field tables. Now with this, I'm going to select, in fact, on the pivot table, I'm going to right click in there and do sort largest to smallest. And then I'm going to select this axis here and do Control 1. And I'm going to, on the properties here, I'm going to do categories in reverse order on the axes. Wonderful. And then I'm going to select this axis up here, select the labels, and I want it high because it's in reverse order now, so that they're at the bottom. I'm then going to select the budget data series on here, and again I'm going to do 100% overlap. I'm going to make the gap width 50% to make them bigger. And then with that data series still selected, I'm going to change the fill to no fill and make the border a solid line. Let's select the dark green here, like so, and then make it 2 points. So make it thicker so it stands out. Wonderful. And then with that done, I'm going to select the plus sign here and say I want a chart title, and the legend, I want that to be on the top, like so. So let me move these around and add the chart title like I did last time. There we go. Now I'm going to take that, I'm going to do Control X to cut it, go to my report, and here about what there. And now I'm just going to do paste, Control V, paste it. I'm not going to do anything else because I want to get the other charts up as well. So I'm going to go back to my support analysis tab. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this pivot table a meaningful name again, and I'm going to give it the same name as I did last time. So remember, like tables, etc., you need to give them meaningful names so you know what they are. So I'm going to select this table, pivot table analysis, and the pivot table name, and give it a name there, like so. So you can call it whatever you want, as long as it's meaningful to you. Now I've done that, I'm then going to take this table here and I'm going to select the whole of the pivot table and do copy. And again, just do Control V and paste it there. And again, let's make these wider so I can see them all. And then on the pivot table analysis, with that table selected, field list, I'm going to get rid of category, and I'm going to expand the calendar here. I'm going to take the year, drop it in the row, and I'm going to take the month and drop that in also. Boom. That easy, yeah. Now, again, I'm going to give this a meaningful name. So again, in the pivot table there, give it meaningful numbers for the year, PVT numbers for the year, so I've got a meaningful name. And now I'm going to insert another chart. So insert, I want that one. And again, let's just make this a little bit bigger. So right click on the fill buttons, hide all fill buttons on chart. I'm going to select the budget like so, and do Control 1, make them 100% overlap, again 50% on the width, so they fill look a bit bigger, and then with the bucket icon selected, I want no fill. On the line, I want a solid line. So using that thick green colour, again, go to 2 points to make it thicker. And then the plus sign, I want a chart title, and I want the legend at the top. And again, let me just rename this and move it to my report. Go, select the chart, do Control X, go to the report, just paste it below there, Control V. So I've now got my two charts. So the next thing I need to do now is I need to create, using a pivot table here, I want to create my numbers by category and program here. So we're going to do something else now within the Power Pivot. So at the moment I've got these two pivot tables like so. I'm going to go to Power Pivot, Manage, and I'm going to go to my table projects here, and I'm going to select it, and I'm going to add some measures. Now within Power Pivot, there's a number of ways that you can do this. So you can either do it here through measures and new measure, or within the Power Pivot table you can create them here. So by selecting below this line here, by selecting below this line, I can then start typing the name of that, and my first thing that I want is my total budget. So I'm going to go total budget, I'm going to do a colon, so you can see I've typed it there, and then I'm going to do equals, and I'm going to type sum. It's a bit like an Excel formula. Well, it's very close to an Excel formula. So you can now see my tables within the model, and what I want to do is I want to sum up the budget from the budget table. So I'm going to select that and then close bracket like so, and then hit enter. And if I just expand this column out like so, you can see there's the total budget. That's now a measure. And with that selected, if I then go to the format and make that currency, and again I'm going to get rid of the decimal points, so click to the right, click to the right, and there you go. So that's my first measure that I've just created within Power Pivot. Let's do it another way. So let me just save that, let me close that down. So again, on the Power Pivot ribbon, I'm going to do measures, new measure, and I'm going to do it within my table projects, and I'm going to call this total actuals like so, and then the formula is going to be sum, open bracket, and this time I want to sum my actuals, some of my actuals from the actuals data table. So I'm going to double click on that, I'm going to close that bracket, and then I'm going to say, right, I want it to be a currency, and I don't want any decimal places. I can also check the formula to make sure there's nothing wrong with my formula there. All looks fine, and if I click OK, it's now done. Now what you'll see, it's actually added total actuals here, and in here I'm just going to take that off. I don't want it in there. And if I go to manage, and I go to, and if you look at the projects here, you can now see I've got total budget and total actual, so it's added it below. So now I want to do a total variance. So I'm going to type it there, total. And you can see it appearing. So I've got this selected, but you can see it appearing up here. If I go variance, like so, so do colon, do equals, and I'm going to do, instead of doing a sum, I've got equals, I'm going to select that first field there, and do minus, then select the budget total budget, like so, and then I'm going to hit enter. And there you go, it's calculated a variance for me there now. And again, I'm going to change that to currency, and I'm going to get rid of my decimal places on that. So I'm now going to add another measure. I want to know what that is as a percentage. So I'm going to type again, percentage variance. I'm going to do my colon. I'm going to do equals. Now I want the absolute number here. So the absolute number, so I'm going to go ABS. That'll make sense in a minute. So if I do ABS tab to get the open bracket there, and I am going to select that number there, the total variance, divided by the total budget. Yeah, and then I'm going to close bracket and hit enter. And there you go. And then I'm going to change that. So with that variance selected, to a percentage format. Yeah, so there you go. It's changed as a percentage. And again, with that selected there, I don't want the decimal places, so I'm just going to get rid of the decimal places so it's a whole number. So there's my percentage. So I've now done my percentage, and I think what I'm then going to do is I'm going to hit save. So I've got 4 new measures there, and I'm then going to close that down like so. And what I'm going to do here is I'm also going to now add a KPI. So the KPI is where I want to set a goal. So fundamentally, I want to see if people are sticking to within 10% of their budget. So whether that's plus or minus their budget, I want to understand if they're sticking within 10%. And then if it's beyond 20% of that, then we've got a problem. So if I do KPI, so I'm going to set a measure, so new KPI, and I'm going to base that on my percentage variance, like so. Yeah. And I'm going to make it an absolute, and I'm going to here, I'm going to select this. So the lower end is going to be green, the higher end is going to be towards the higher end, it's going to go for amber red. So I'm going to select that. I'm then going to set my value, my absolute value, which will formulate my target. So in this, because it's a percentage, it's going to be 0.1. And if I click out of that, tab, there you go. So the first field that I've got selected here, I'm going to do 0.1 and hit enter. Yeah. And then on this one, I'm going to make it 2. Like so. Hit return. And then as far as this value here, so the target is 0.1. And if I take this and drag that out, you can see I can make that a little bit larger there. But fundamentally what you can see is that anything within 10% variance is fine. Anything beyond that up to 20% is amber, and beyond that is going to be red. Yeah, so that's my KPI. I've set my goal, so I'm going to click OK there. Now again, I'm just going to take that off that table. I don't need it there. I don't want it just yet. So now I've done that and I've created my KPI. And if I again go to manage, I've got my measures here. You also can see now there's a little icon against that, which is basically saying there's also a KPI against it as well. Okay, so I'm going to save that, close it down. I don't need to do anything else there now. So I'm going to take this table, going to copy it. I'm going to go to my report, and with this cell selected, I'm going to do Control V to paste it. And again, I'm just going to make it a little bit wider. Get rid of that for a second. Make that a little bit wider. And I'm happy with that. And again, on the pivot analysis field list, I'm going to go to my projects table. I'm going to drag program down into the rows. So I've now got the program there, but now I want to add my variance information in here. So I've got the variance percentage. So I've got variance there, so I can add the variance to the sum. Get rid of that. So you can see it's appeared there now, the variance. I'm then going to add my percentage, like so. So what does it represent as a percentage? And again, I'm going to take the status, and I'm also going to drag that into the values there. So I've now got my status as well. Now at the moment, they're all red. That's fine. So I've got that information in there. So what I'm going to do, and again, I don't have to format any of this because I've done it within the data modeler, within Excel's data modeler, within Power Pivot. I'm going to shut that down. I'm going to make some changes to these headings. So I'm going to make that budget versus actuals, like so. I'm going to make that prog, short for program, actuals. I am going to make that prog, program, budget, like that prog variance. So that I'm fine with. Let's make that variance KPI. So, okay, I'm happy with that. I'm going to get rid of, in fact, if I look at the field list settings, I want the budget first. So if I do that, so that just moves those around. That's great. Can close that down. Let's just make these a little bit bigger. These all sized appropriately. Wonderful. Now again, on the design ribbon with this pivot table selected, I want a blank row after each item, and I want a subtotal after each group. And there we go. So I've got the subtitles, and on the pivot analysis, I'm going to get rid of the buttons. Now I've done that, I'm going to insert my timeline bar. So with this pivot table selected, on the pivot analysis, and again either through that or the insert ribbon, I'm going to do insert timeline, and I'm going to select date, not the budget date, not the actuals month end. I want the date and the calendar, because that's what connects them all. I'm going to click OK. So there's my, again, if I hold down my Alt key so it snaps into position, and I'm going to hold down my Alt key and just move it to the end there, like so. Now you'll notice I've got 2028 on here, so if I just move this across to 2024 and I select Jan, so this date has changed, and you can see the KPIs have also changed as well. Is I need to connect that to my budget versus actuals pivot chart that drives this chart here. So right click on this, select report connections, and I'm going to choose this support budget versus actuals by category, and select that and click OK. So now this changes also. When I select this, it all changes automatically. Wonderful. So I've now got that information in there, like so. So let's add now the other slicers, so I can then drill into the category or the program or the project information before I take care of some of these up here. So I'm going to again select this and do insert, and I'm going to insert slicer, or I can do it from pivot table analysis. So I'm going to do insert slicer, and again I want on here, I want the category. So if I go to my project, select that, I want my program and projects. Remember, they're all linked into this cross-reference table, and click OK. If I drag these across, and again them all selected, I'm just going to change on the slicer, just make sure they're all the same theme, like so. Again, hold down my Alt key so it snaps. Slicer ribbon, I'm going to change that to 3 columns, like so. Again, hold down the Alt key so it all snaps into position, like so. And there you go. So I've now formatted all those. Again, I need to connect these so they change all the data that's been viewed here. So I'm going to right click on the category, report connections, and select all my pivot tables, like so, like I did before. Do the same for program. So now everything is now changing based on what I've got selected. Wonderful. Now, let's sort out these summaries here. So remember before in the previous video, I got these linked to actual cells. So within the form, so these are text boxes and they're linked to cells. So all I've got to do, and those cells are within the report analysis. So all I've got to do is sort out these calculations in here. So the budget for the month, we know if I do equals, go to my report, so it's going to be this column here, the grand total. So I'm going to select that. I'm then going to do for the actuals, equals on the report, the actuals, grand total on that pivot. And again, it's because it's get pivot data, it will automatically and dynamically change as the pivot table changes. And again, finally, the variance for the month equals so. My budget is going to be easy enough, so that equals this value here. Now, last time when we did year to date, we used the filter function. But let's do it another way. Let's use the SUMIF function. So if I go, so the first one, as far as the budget is concerned, it equals SUMIF open. So the criteria range is going to be this here, the actuals, and the criteria is going to be, it's got to be greater than 0. So I'm going to do open quotation mark. I'm going to put the operator in, which is the greater than operator. And I'm going to put the ampersand or the and sign, and then put 0. Then I'm going to hit comma. So if it meets that criteria, then sum this up here, like so, and close bracket. Boom. And there you go. Now, as far as the actuals to date, I don't need to do a filter. I can just, again, reference the grand total on the actuals to date. So I'm going to do equals actuals to date there, like so. And as far as my variance, year to date variance, then that's a simple case of doing equals that minus the budget. There you go. So I've now got all those numbers in there. So if I go to my report, you can now see all those numbers and they all change dynamically. Wonderful. So all looking good. I can now filter this information. I can look at information. I can see what's going on with my measures and achievements against my KPI target. That's all wonderful. However, I would love to be able to see when I'm selecting information how many programs and projects I'm working with based on my selection. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add 2 additional measures, and I'm going to put a program and project count on the summary here, so I can then see based on my selections what that looks like. So back to Power Pivot, manage. I'm going to go onto my table projects. This is where I've got my other measures, as you can see. So the first measure is I want a count of my programs. So I'm going to do hash, because I need to make this unique. And again, I've got this selected and you can see me typing it up here, the name. So the first part is the name of the measure. I'm going to do colon, and this equals, and I'm going to start typing distinct. And what I want is this function here, the distinct count. And if I scroll all the way down, I want a distinct count of my program there. And I'm going to do close bracket, hit return. So there you go. So I've got a distinct count of my programs. I'm going to change the format to make sure it is a whole number, like so. And then I'm going to do projects. Now, when I say I put a hash in front, so if I type projects as the name and do colon and then do equals, start typing the function distinct count, and I scroll down to projects, look what happens. Should get an error message. Here you go. So yeah, this measure or column is the same, has the same name, so it already exists. So if I click OK there, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put hash in front of it, then hit return, and it's fine. And again, I'm just going to change that format from general to a whole number. So I've now got my two measures there. So if I then save and close that down, and I go to my support analysis, I think this KPI label, I was going to do a speedo visual, but I think that's probably overkill. However, if you do want to see how to do a speedo using this data so it shows performance against KPIs on the summary, then let me know in the comments, and if I get enough interest, I'll do a separate video on how to add a speedo to this visual as well. So I'm just going to kill that because I don't want that. So I'm going to copy this pivot table again, do control copy, and I'm going to paste it here, because what I want now is I've got to get the values before I can use those measures into a pivot table. So if I do control V to paste that pivot table, again I'm just going to expand some things here, and then with the pivot table selected, I'm going to go to pivot analysis and display my field list. So I don't need category, I don't want my actuals, and I don't want the budget. What I want is from that project table is I want those two new measures I've created. So there they are, program, drag that down, and I'm going to drag down the project, and there you go. So I've got the two counts there, so I can now close that down. So the two labels that I'm going to create is I'm going to join the data here with a bit of text. So all I've got to do then is reference the cell, and that'll appeal in the label and will be dynamic. So I'm going to do equals. So the first one is going to be program. So quotation marks, my text and quotation marks. I'm going to type program. I'm then going to do a colon and space, then close my quotation marks. Then I'm going to do the ampersand, and I'm going to use the text function to get to format the pivot data as well. So I'm going to do text, open bracket. The value is going to be this value here, which will be the get pivot data. And remember, it's dynamic. I'm then going to do comma, and the format is just going to be a number, like so, and then close that bracket. If I hit return, there you go. So now it's done that value, and that'll be dynamic. So that number will change based on that pivot table. And again, I'll do the same for the project. So equals, open quotation marks, projects, colon, space, then close quotation marks, the ampersand, then I'm going to use a text function, open bracket, and again I'm just going to select this one here, yeah, and I'm going to do comma, and then again it's going to be a 0 format. So the format is always going to be in quotation marks, and then close that bracket and hit return. So I've now got my two values there. If I go back to my report, so let's reuse one of these. So I'm going to select that. I'm just going to hold down my control key and then drag to the left, and it'll copy it. So in this cell where I've got the budget, I'm going to change the alignment from in the middle to the top. So move that to the top. And then I'm going to move this here to the top like so. I'm going to make it a little bit thinner. Well, I'm happy with that, and then I'm going to do equals, go to my support analysis and select this cell with the program information in and hit return. And what I'm going to do is just select that and do format painter, and then just copy that format to there, and then all I'm going to do is change it to it's to the left like so. And again, with that selected, I'm going to hold down the control key and drag it down, so I'm copying it. Yeah, change that and do equals, and I'm going to bring the project information through. So take that cell and then hit return. And again, I'm going to take that format painter and copy it to there. Now all I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold down the Alt key, so these snap to the left. Hold down the Alt key, so it just snaps to the left, and there you go. So now, if I select one of these, so if I select hearts and minds, you can now see the numbers change dynamically. I just want that to be programmed. So let me go into here, select this cell, just add an S to the end there, just to be consistent. Hit return. And the label will automatically change based on that. And you'll notice that it's automatically, this is automatically filtering that table, and that's because we copied this. So all the connections that this has will have been copied over to this table that we created. So if I go into my report, and I do right click on connections, now, perfect example here. If you don't name your pivot tables, you don't know what they're referring to. So I can see this is in the support sheet, and I can see this is in the report sheet. And I have a feeling it's this one here. So I'm going to go into, because I am OCD about this, I'm going to click portfolio analysis. There you go. I'm going to call that PVT report category table, like so, and hit return, so I know what it's referring to. And then on the support analysis, I'm going to select that, and again on the pivot table analysis, I'm going to call this PVT prog, short for program, project, so prog short for project count. So just know what they are. So now with that done, I can easily select this information, see what it's referring to, select program A, so I get program 1, so that has 5 projects associated with it. I can see that they cover mandatory, maintenance and regulatory based on the shading. Wonderful. And again, works exactly the same. So if I go into my actuals, so let me show you, because at the moment when we look down we don't have April data. So if I take the April actuals, so here are all my materials are held. So if I take the April actuals, so location 1, take that, copy it, go back to my actuals, go into the first location and paste those actuals. Go back to my actuals, go back to location 2 for April. Copy those actuals, copy, paste those into location 2, like so, and then close that down. And if I go to data, refresh all, boom, it's done. So there's April actuals. See my performance against my variance KPI. Wonderful. So in the last video when we were using Power Query, just Power Query, and doing our data visualization, we put a visual indicator against the program variance. So remember, if it's a negative, it means we've underspent, but if we've got a positive number, it means we've overspent against the budget. So let's put a visual indicator in there that represents this, and we don't want to do what we did last time because we've already got this KPI icon here. So before we did conditional formatting and we used the icon sets to do a visual indicator against this. This time we're going to do a calculated rule. So I'm going to do new rule and I'm going to use a formula. So we've got V5 selected. I am going to do equals if V5, so it's a relative reference, so it moves along in the pivot table. If it is greater than 0, that is bad, so I want you to do something. So I'm going to do comma, true, and then if it's false, don't do anything. So if it's true, I want you to make the text red, so bold, and make the font red within the cell and do OK. And then here at the top here, apply the rule 2. I'm going to say all cells showing prog variance values. Select that and then click OK. So we've got some values that have gone red. Again, with V5 still selected, I'm going to do conditional formatting, new rule, use a formula, and I'm going to do equals if, and this time if V5 is less than 0, that's good. So I want you to do some positive formatting here. So I'm going to do comma, true, do something. If it's not true, that statement, then obviously don't do anything, don't apply this rule. And I'm going to go to formatting, make it bold, and this time I'm going to make it green and click OK. And again, I'm going to apply this rule to all prog variance values here. So select that, then click OK. So there we go. So now we've got a visual indicator against the program variance value. So even though this is a positive here, it's outside of the KPI measure, the 10%. So we can see that visualization and use that information along with the KPI information. And again, you know, your users only need to react to or interact with this report sheet, so you can literally hide these other sheets here, so we don't need this to be visible. So if I right click on it, select hide. On the budgets, we don't need to see that, so right click on that and select hide. And on the static data, I can right click on that and select hide. Now we could apply some additional protection on this so users don't mess around with your dashboard and all the hard work you've done around sorting this out. And if you want to see how to do that, then let me know in the comments and I'll do a separate video on how to protect this sheet and the structure of this template. Also, if you want to see how to do that speedometer, and add that to the dashboard as well, so you can see a speedometer that represents your performance against your KPI. Again, let me know in the comments, and if I get enough interest, again I'll do a separate video on how to do that speedometer. So I hope you found this video informative. If so, please click the like button, hit the subscribe, and also hit that notifications button for future content. And I wish you a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Take care, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye bye now.